To say that Hoyoverse cooked hard with Ochkanatlan would be a severe understatement. We are talking about a region on par with Enkanomiya, granting us insights into not just the history of Natlan, but also giving us some of the biggest and coolest plot twists on the nature of the struggle between the ancient dragons, the angels, and the primordial one. All of this is thanks to one man, the first bearer of the Flame Lord's blessing, the Python King, Och-Kan. Now, I don't usually include these kinds of disclaimers, but since we'll be going over several records written personally by Och-Kan himself at various points in this video, it's crucial to understand the type of mindset he had. Och-Kan was someone who suffered from a severe inferiority complex, despising both himself and his dragon kin. And while I'm not saying that this affects his accuracy as a narrator, it is important to keep his biases in mind, as they definitely play a role in shaping the way he views and describes other characters and events. Och-Kan was an incredibly important historical figure, so before we delve into all the insane stuff we got from the world quest Lost Traveler in the Ashen Realm, I want to first go over the fascinating lore behind the Python King to understand who this Och-Kan really was. Our story begins with three deities from an era where an ancient empire dominated the lands today known as Natlan under the banner of the Pyro Sovereign. The gods in question are the Mistress of the Night, Xiuhcoatl, an angel, the Sage of the Stolen Flame, Waxaklahun Ubah, a dragon, and the first Pyro Archon, Xbalanque, a human. Following the war between the Seven Sovereigns and the Primordial One, the god of death Renova deemed Natlan's leyline network to be damaged beyond repair. And so, she instructed the angel Xiuhcoatl to construct the Night Kingdom using the remnants of the destroyed leylines. Many of the dragons who lost the war retreated to this destroyed land and founded their own empire, taking the humans there as subjects and vassals. However, the divine ruler of Natlan's dragons, the Flame Lord Xiuhcoatl, was left far too decrepit and weak, presumably due to the damage he sustained during the Ancient Dragon's War with the First Descender, and his civilization consequently fell into stagnation. The wisest of dragons, Waxaklahun Ubah, recognized the eventual decline of his own kin, for the dragons were a proud species who valued strength and ruthlessness above all else. Yet if the Sovereign of Fire had no claws or fangs of his own, then he could never carry them forward into the future. The flame that burned within the first dragons was doomed to slowly fade. Thus, stripped of their pride, they were cast into gradual obscurity, to be phased out of history not in a final blaze of glory, but akin to the last flickering embers of candlelight. So, the Dragon Sage decided to take matters into his own hands, devising a multi-generational plot that would change the course of history. Waxaklahun stole a fragment of the primal fire from Xiuhcoatl and introduced the power of phlogiston to humanity, promising the first of them to master it, the great Cha'ak, that one day a champion would be born out of his lineage and ascend to the oldest of thrones. In the meantime, Waxaklahun also fathered, or perhaps more accurately created, a child, a dragon who interestingly had a human soul. This unique child bore the mark of the Flame Lord, signifying his potential to become the next Sovereign of Fire. The Dragon Sage named his son Och-Kan and carefully raised him amongst humankind, telling him of how it was his fate to one day kill the Pyro Dragon and claim his throne of divinity. After all, how could he not? That was Och-Kan's birthright. As the last true-born heir to the blood of the ancient dragons, he was Waxaklahun's perfect progeny, a dragon with a human soul. Only he could inherit the authority of fire, and once he did, Natlan would all be his. He would command the might of the dragons. He would earn the loyalty of humans. Only he could unite the two worlds beyond the influence of Celestia or the Abyss, and one day usher their evolution unto greater heights. Yet, Och-Kan would never realize his destiny. The greatest historical event that the traveler learns about shortly after setting foot onto Natlan is of how the human champion Xbalanque slayed the Pyro Dragon Sovereign in battle, claiming the authority of fire as his own. This story is the fundamental cornerstone of Natlan's mythos, the ultimate justification for the nation's laws and decrees. A mortal man who killed a god, earning the right upon which all heroes who followed would ascend into archonhood. Heroes like the Scarlet-Eyed Boy. Heroes like Mavuika. But it was this very act that Xbalanque did which unknowingly stripped Och-Kan of his purpose. You see, although he was raised amongst humans and took a human form, Och-Kan remained a half-dragon, and the hallmarks of his species manifested on his body in many ways, including the distinct golden patterns on his face, which he infamously despised. It is heavily implied that Och-Kan's draconic features brought him enough negative attention for him to feel like an outcast and come to despise himself. Eventually, he was captured by the dragons, and during his captivity he managed to learn much about their technology and language. It was then that the human hero Xbalanque found and freed Och-Kan from his imprisonment, taking him back to his tribe as a friend. But perhaps the most valuable gift that Xbalanque gave to the sacred half-dragon was his allies. Not long after, the legendary heroes Yupanqui, Lianka, Ahpub, and Xiuhcoatl would join the soon-to-be god of war on his campaign against the ancient dragons. To Och-Kan, Xbalanque was far, far more than just a friend. The kindness that Xbalanque had shown to him was unprecedented, and thus the half-dragon saw in this mortal hero what he always wished for, what he lacked, what he could never be: a true human god. And at that moment, Och-Kan found hope. When the traveler and Paimon make it to Ochkanatlan's ruins, they encounter two very peculiar friends. A young lady from the Flower Feather clan named Bona and her little dragon companion Kokowik. But it's clear from the start that something is off about Bona, as she is an explorer who doesn't know about the Adventurers Guild renowned all over Teyvat. As if that wasn't enough, she also tells the traveler about her awesome auntie Liruwu, where that name belongs to a woman who lived hundreds of years in the past. Now, for those of you familiar with the lore of the artifact set Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City, you likely immediately picked up that something wrong was going on here. This is because Bona is not a real person, rather she is a manifested memory left behind by an adventurer who died roughly 475 years ago, either at the hands of Waxaklahun Ubah himself, or, more likely, the evil dragon who inhabited the ruins of Ochkanatlan. As for the people she talks about, they are the same group of adventurers mentioned in each of the 5 set pieces from the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City. Their leader, Taika, was Bona's own father, who earned himself the nickname of the Demon Warrior for being one of the strongest men of his time from the Flower Feather clan, second only to the great hero Menelik, the ancient name-bearer whom Chaska would later succeed. The 4 other adventurers who went with Taika were Liruwu, Legba, Titu, and Kopan. Ah, I bet you guys recognize a couple of those names, don't you? When the fallout from Conria's cataclysm eventually reached Natlan, Taika bid farewell to his then-pregnant wife, took up arms, and left with the other 4 to Ochkanatlan in pursuit of a treasure known as the Jade of Return. As legends told of how the Python King, Och-Kan, once forged such an item that supposedly had the power to repel the Abyss. Of course, we now know that there was never such a thing as the Jade of Return, as it was a myth fabricated by the Sage of Stolen Flame to entice people brave enough to venture into Ochkanatlan in search of the Sacred Lord's fabled treasure. Those brave, or rather foolish enough, to take the journey would all end up being devoured by the evil dragon, whom we now know was Och-Kan's body and soul without his mind. The dragon sage used all the souls whom his son devoured to fashion countless masks which he wore to don the guise of man throughout Natlan's history. As a matter of fact, Waxaklahun Ubah tells us that this isn't the first time we met him, and considering the presence of both Legba and Titu in Och-Kan's memories 500 years ago, yeah, these two are probably a couple of his many masks, and I wouldn't be surprised if Chikya from the People of the Springs is one too. With that being said, do not let this plot twist distract you from the main takeaway of what the Sage of Stolen Flame is doing here. There is a lot going on with this revelation all at the same time. As such, there are many ways to tackle the topic, several of which I will discuss in upcoming videos, but for now I want to primarily focus on this idea of using souls as masks. Luckily for us, Waxaklahun's very own son was infamous for the mask he wore to hide the draconic features he despised so much. Get ready, because now is where our real discussion begins. Aside from Bona, the other mysterious friend whom the Traveler and Paimon make in Ochkanatlan is this cute-looking dragon spirit thingy named Kokoik. This little fellow bears some visual resemblances to the Anemo Archon Barbatos back when he was a wisp of the Thousand Winds. But more importantly, he is the mind of the Python King, Och-Kan. After the first Pyro Archon sacrificed himself to the primal fire, the Sacred Lord writes in his notes how he wished he could enter the flames alongside him, but found his despicable self unworthy of such a warm and brilliant ending. Thus, Och-Kan took over the Grand Alliance Xbalanque created, declaring himself as Holy Sovereign, follower of the one true human god. However, Och-Kan's ideals were far too radical, and ironically, his obsession with elevating humanity beyond the abyss, dragons, and heavens caused him to steer away from the commandments that Xbalanque had left him. And so, the Sacred Lord became a tyrant. Shortly after Xbalanque returned to the Primal Fire, Och-Kan found what could only be an ancient dragon matriarch and kept her by his side for a while. He notes how he found her disposition and manner of speech, so similar as they were to his father Waxaklahun Ubah, nauseating. To give you some background on her, the ancient dragon empire of Natlan consisted of various cities that were each ruled by matriarchs who ultimately answered to the one true Pyro sovereign Xiuhcoatl. This female dragon must have been one such matriarch for the city of Xiuhcoatl, who saw in Och-Kan the potential to succeed her lord and restore their species' dignity. This demonic entity, as he called her, shared with him many valuable details regarding the ancient dragons and Celestia, all of which I will discuss in my next video. After witnessing the horrifying power her kind held in the distant past, Och-Kan's paranoia over the survival of his cherished age of humanity grew even greater. Eventually, Och-Kan imprisoned that ancient dragon inside of the old core of Xiuhcoatl, where she became known as, oh my god, Dragon Lord Xiuhcoatl Xiuhcoatl. For the first time ever, I agree with Paimon, let's just call her Xiuhcoatl. Anyway, the Python King forced Xiuhcoatl to sing for his empire. As for why he wanted her to sing, the word Xiuhcoatl in Mayan can mean anything from soul and spirit to life energy. So the Xiuhcoatl mechanism he imprisoned her in is something akin to the source mechanism where the traveler first meets Xiuhcoatl. Angels are renowned for their association with music and poetry, and their songs were used by gods like Remus to create his fate-defying grand symphony with Sibylla. So if we combine what we know about angels like Sibylla and Xiuhcoatl, it becomes pretty clear that the songs of angels can influence and reorder the flow of ley lines. I covered all of this recently in my video about angels and fate. You can check it out for further context on this topic. That video has already aged really well, which is always good to see. But Xiuhcoatl wasn't exactly an angel, she's an ancient dragon. Which is interesting, as this implies that the dragons, like the angels, also comprehend the symphony with which fate is written. Xiuhcoatl saw Och-Kan's actions as a betrayal of her trust and vision in him, so she refused to sing as he ordered. This enraged the Holy Sovereign, who as a punishment ripped her heart out and broke it into 3 fragments, which the Traveler later restored. It's important to keep in mind that this heart in question is made out of jade, and the reason behind why jade is so important happens to also be something that I discussed in my video about angels and fate. Yeah, that video aged really well. Och-Kan vehemently believed that Xbalanque should remain the only god in Natlan. To prevent the ascension of another pyro-archon, he completely banned any offerings made to Xiuhcoatl and the Night Kingdom. He then ordered that all authority over the tribes be consolidated with him in the Grand Alliance. Under these decrees, the dragons and saurians were fiercely persecuted and turned into lowly beasts and slaves for Ochkanatlan. But as all dynamics of oppressor and oppressed go, the people eventually launched a revolt against the Python King led by the scarlet-eyed hero, who would eventually go on to become Xbalanque's true successor. Unlike what the legends would lead you to believe, Och-Kan survived the battle. The Python King split his mind from his body and soul. While he sacrificed his mind to power the new core of Xiuhcoatl, which he constructed, his body fell into the abyssal mire, becoming corrupted by it and turning on him in the process, hence the evil dragon that came after. It is said that the ancient dragon lord, he who once held dominion over all light and wisdom, transformed one of his eyes into a conduit of supreme authority, by which all flames might be governed. When Xiuhcoatl was defeated, this divine eye of his was taken by Waxaklahun and Xbalanque and divided into two golden entreaties kept by each one of them to signify their alliance and the unity of their species. It is abundantly clear from his writings that instead of his father, Och-Kan idolized Xbalanque. For the half-human despised his other self so much so that he said it should be put beneath the boots of humans. Thus, it is only natural that he would see his father's ambitions as being antithetical to Xbalanque's people. After all, there is no hope without humanity, so evolution has no place to take them away from him. This twisted loyalty that Och-Kan had for humanity over his own father and kin is perhaps symbolized by the fact that he would later inherit Xbalanque's golden entreaty, out of which Waxaklahun later made the legend of the Jade of Return. Nonetheless, the Python King remained a dragon, and as much as he tried to hide it, his draconic blood overpowered his hatred up to the point where it became undeniable, until his only visible eye took the form of the lowly beasts he hated so much. I find Och-Kan's case to be very interesting, because again, he was a dragon with a human soul, and although he started out looking mostly human, his body eventually morphed into its true draconic appearance. Now, you could say that this was due to the Flame Lord's blessing overpowering his blood as it did with Menelik Saurian Hualankan-Gobu, but I would like to propose a different theory. Cocoweek, which is the manifestation of Och-Kan's mind, is draconic in nature, hence why it could operate the core of Xiuhcoatl like Ixtlel, since only dragons are able to control such devices. However, his soul was somehow that of a human, and it is this soul that I want to focus on. In my video about the Primordial One's creation of Tevat, I highlighted the classical Greek theory of forms proposed by the philosopher Plato, which I found to be congruent with many aspects of Genshin Impact's world building and cosmology. The main idea is that Plato postulated the existence of two worlds. One is the world of matter, imperfect and chaotic, while the other is the world of forms, housing the ideal forms of all concepts as they are truly meant to be. Plato then suggested that a cosmic craftsman whom he named the Demiurge, that's literally the primordial one, takes the forms and impresses them upon the world of matter, thereby molding matter around the flawless image of these perfect forms. However, due to the inherent imperfections of matter, the concepts in the world of forms are imperfectly portrayed in reality. The catch here is that according to Plato, the world of forms is a transcendental one, and it is where the true shape of mortal souls reside. To be honest, even I myself was not too convinced by this theory when I made it. But given the direction that the story is going in, it appears that the content of that video are going to become even more relevant over time. You see, for a period of his life, Och-Kan looked humanoid despite having the body of a dragon, while the only human part he had was his soul. Even his mind, Cocoweek, was draconic. But if you look at this from the purview of Plato's theory of forms, it all starts to make sense. As sad as this might sound, Och-Kan's entire life was part of Waxaklahun Ubah-Kan's experiment. The wisest of dragons took the numusia, the soul and the essence of a human, then molded the substance, the matter of a dragon around it, creating Och-Kan in the process. This explains why the dragon sage gathered all the souls that Och-Kan's body devoured. In his own words, he used them to forge human masks, to mold his body in their form, and walk the world in the guise of man. Yet, what I find most peculiar of all is Waxaklahun's promise to his son. As part of the experiment, after Och-Kan's death, the dragon sage would return to collect his soul. It seems that the Sage of the Stolen Flame is cooking once more. And I say, let him cook. Learning that the tyrant Och-Kan, who devoted his life to Xbalanque, is in fact Waxaklahun's son, was definitely one of the coolest moments for me from Ochkanatlan's world quests. But when it comes to making babies, it takes two to tango, unless you are a pari, in that case it takes three. So now that we know the father, who is the mother? Well, it's hard to say, mainly because she might unironically not exist, since it's possible that Waxaklahun found a way to extract or acquire a human soul, then embedded it in a dragon. However, this answer, as likely as it seems, is boring as hell, and if you ask me, it's definitely worth it to explore other possibilities. Although, before I do, I must preface by saying that this section of the video is highly speculative, which stands in sharp contrast to the ones after it, as I believe those will be the most plausible theories of all. The simplest answer to the identity of Och-Kan's mother that I can think of is that she was an ordinary human whom Waxaklahun Ubah-Kan tricked to create an experimental heir to the sovereign of fire Xiuhcoatl. Such an explanation is convenient as it justifies never showing or mentioning this character again. On the other hand, I wonder if Och-Kan's mother is either Xiuhcoatl or Renova. I am leaning more towards the latter, mainly because of Cocoweek. As I pointed out earlier in the video, Cocoweek, who is Och-Kan's mind, bears a noteworthy resemblance to Barbatos' wisp form from 2,600 years ago, particularly in the shape of their wings. The real similarities, though, are much more apparent in their stories. Both Barbatos and Och-Kan idolized human heroes who led rebellions against a stronger foe. In Old Mondstadt, there was the nameless bard against the Caribbean, while in ancient Natlan, Xbalanque challenged Xiuhcoatl. And neither of the two got over the departure of their human idols, to the point where Barbatos takes the form of the nameless bard thousands of years later to this day. As for Och-Kan, a single look at how he's depicted in murals is enough to tell how much he molded his appearance after Xbalanque. Aside from the humans they admired, during the world quest Lost Traveler in the Ashen Realm, we witness Cocoweek's ability to manifest the memories of deceased individuals through the character of Bona. This is something that Barbatos is also shown to be capable of to a greater extent when he summoned either the soul or memory of Stanley for Hans during the story quest Should You Be Trapped in a Windless Land. Given all these clues, and considering that both Xiuhcoatl and Renova were acquainted with the Pyro Archon Xbalanque, it's more than likely that the two also had relations with the other architect behind Natlan's creation, Waxaklahun Ubah-Kan. Renova and Xiuhcoatl are also goddesses of death, who have access to countless souls at any given moment, especially Renova, who governs death all over to that. The reason I am leaning more towards Renova, though, is because Barbatos was a wisp born of the Thousand Winds, the god of time, Istaroth, who is a shade of the Primordial One. If the aforementioned comparison between the two holds water, then it would stand to reason that Och-Kan's mother would be a shade as well. Additionally, while describing the process of splitting his mind to the Traveler and Paimon, Och-Kan explicitly says that he became a seed in the form of Cocoweek, which is very telling, since seeds are featured in one of the most iconic phrases about Istaroth and Barbatos. Seeds of stories brought by the wind and cultivated by time, stories brought on the wind will bloom into legend in due time. What's funny about this is that when Paimon asks the traveler about who the Bona they met from Och-Kan's memories really was, the traveler tells her that Bona was just a character from a story, after which the duo discuss how they helped her finish her story and promised to spread her legend in Natlan. Alternatively, I can see how it can be thematically fitting for Xiuhcoatl to be the mother instead. Alongside the Pyro Archon and the Dragon Sage, the Lord of the Night is one of the 3 deities who directly govern and influence Natlan. So it would be cool if Och-Kan was the literal child of Waxaklahun and Xiuhcoatl, then also be the stepchild or successor or disciple of Xbalanque. Kind of like a perfect progeny of Natlan's 3 gods. Keep in mind that this is just speculation for the sake of speculation, and it's more likely that Och-Kan's mother either doesn't exist or won't ever be mentioned. Obviously though, the Python King was all but perfect. He was a man who bore the blood of the ancient dragons, and under different circumstances, he might have claimed the throne of the Pyro Sovereign. Regardless, he willingly forsook all of that in reverence to a human champion who lacked everything he hated about himself, and dedicated his life to following that Archon until his loyalty turned into obsession. And obsession brought forth delusion and short-sightedness that led him to commit many atrocities in the name of hope. The hope that his god gave him, the hope that he placed in the humans he so utterly wanted to accept him. The hope he had in every action he took, and every crime as well. It was hope that gave him the courage to defy his father. It was hope that gave him the determination to eliminate all obstacles against the people of the Pyro Archon, including himself. Och-Kan saw the dragons and their descendants as a blight upon the world, and in his pursuit to eradicate them, he turned the 2 siblings Ahpub and Xiuhcoatl against one another until Ahpub murdered his own sister for defying the Holy Sovereign's decree, then took his own life out of grief and regret. His blind hatred towards his own blood caused him to send his most loyal follower, the founder of the Flower Feather clan and Menelik's predecessor, Lianka, to her death in battle. The legendary craftsman Monke, witnessing the fear Och-Kan's reign inspired, cursed the Lord of the Cinder City and abandoned him. Soon after, young Lady Sakuk, whose father died in persecution, found the scarlet-eyed hero and took arms alongside him, until Och-Kan's sole remaining companion, Xiuhcoatl, joined the heroes in rebellion against the tyrant who loved humanity above all else. As his father said, Och-Kan's flaws made him human through and through, in the name of his love for the people Xbalanque saved, in the name of his hope for humanity to one day surpass the gods, the dragons, and the abyss. Any price was worth it, for without humanity, there is no hope. In the end, Och-Kan came to realize his many sins and plotted to atone for them accordingly. So it is that the accursed tyrant of the Cinder City, the Python King who scorned his own kin and was likewise scorned by those he ruled, lived with the heart of a human and died with the pride of a dragon, in a final blaze of glory. Finally, I have one last thought to leave you with regarding Xiuhcoatl before I end this video. As we went over his story, you will have noticed that many aspects of Och-Kan's character parallel those of the Pyro Sovereign, which makes sense, for as a bearer of the Flame Lord's blessing, Och-Kan was fated to succeed Xiuhcoatl. Just like Xiuhcoatl, who sacrificed one of his eyes to create the Golden Conduit, Och-Kan too was known for having one visible draconic eye through his mask. And just like how Xiuhcoatl is said to have been corrupted by the Abyss, so too was Och-Kan's body used as an abyssal conduit. Xbalanque overthrew Xiuhcoatl while Och-Kan was overthrown by Xbalanque's immediate successor, Also, both heroes who fought each draconic tyrant had extremely similar setups in terms of their immediate party members. Against Xiuhcoatl, Xbalanque went with Och-Kan, Xiuhcoatl, Lianca, and the twin siblings Ahpup and Xcoatl. When Och-Kan himself became a tyrant, he was defied by the scarlet-eyed hero Sapuk, Xiuhcoatl, Manke, and the twin heroes Atahualpa and Huascar. Furthermore, just as Xiuhcoatl faked his death against the Heavenly Principles, so too was Och-Kan thought to be dead until Bona freed his mind from the core of Xiuhcoatl approximately 475 years ago. The Python King did not die a true death until after his battle with the Traveler, but even now, this might still not be the last time we'll see him. After all, his father, Waxaklahun Ubah promised to come back and claim his soul. If that turns out to be the case, then I wonder how much of this 2,000-year-long plot was entirely Waxaklahun's plan. The Sage of the Stolen Flame is the one who kickstarted all of Natlan's current storylines by giving humanity access to the power of Xiuhcoatl's primal fire and phlogiston, and I want you to think about this carefully as we end this video. Waxaklahun was also the one who created Och-Kan to overthrow Xiuhcoatl, but when the unexpected variable of Xbalanque appeared, he quickly shifted gears and allied himself with the Pyro Archon. The wisest of dragons is an incredibly dangerous character. We now know for certain that he has taken on countless identities over the ages, and slowly manipulated people into the actions most suitable for his experiments. He has also been the one leading the Traveler and our little Saurian friend across Natlan, so that in the end the Traveler might deliver him the 2 parts of Xiuhcoatl's golden eye, along with a Saurian blessed with the mark of the Flame Lord. From Cocoweek's memories, we know that Waxaklahun wanted his son to use Xiuhcoatl's eye in order to usher a cataclysm and eradicate all life, so that evolution could bring forth even mightier beings into the world, all for the sake of his experiment. But Och-Kan refused to obey his father and sided with humanity. So, with one of his options exhausted, I thought about what other means the Sage of the Stolen Flame decided to resort to after such betrayal. Well, if you think about it, the Pyro Dragon Sovereign had 2 eyes. What I am getting at here is, since Waxaklahun Ubah confirmed that Xiuhcoatl faked his death once, then just like Och-Kan, who already quote-unquote died twice, the original Sovereign of Fire might still be alive and waiting for a certain blonde traveler. All for the sake of the wisest of dragons experiment. Ochkanatlan is an absolutely magnificent expansion that gave us insights into so many aspects of Genshin Impact's lore and Teyvat's history. This video is just scratching the surface, and as ambitious as this sounds, I am already working on 4 more, which I will hopefully be able to get out before version 5.3 Copium. Now that we have covered the basic history of Och-Kanatlan, it's time for the real fun to begin. So get ready, because coming next are the Angels, the Ancient Dragon Empire, the Hexen Circle, Nabu Malikata, and of course, the first Descender. At any rate, that's gonna be it for this video. As always, huge thanks to everyone who supports this channel on Patreon, and thank you all for being part of the approximately 25 to 40% watching till the very end. For now, I've been My Name for Now, and I will catch you in the next time. Take care.